So thanks for joining. This is May 26th, 2020. This is the weekly community call. I had a few things that I wanted to bring up today. So I think the first is, if you haven't been noticing on the email list, there's been a lot of discussion about translation and what we do with respect to translation. And I think before we kind of go off in a variety of different directions on just translating things, we should probably, I mean, I agree, I think it's a good idea, but I think we should probably think about how to consider the process as well as the resources that we have, and kind of just make sure it's a tight working before we head down this path. So I just want to kick this off. So maybe it's a little bit to rein it in just a touch. Do people have thoughts on this before I kind of share a few things that I have with respect to translation, kind of the yay or nay or positives or negatives?
So I think
translation in general. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, from the conversations on the mailing lists, it's pretty exciting to see that there are people interested in picking up translation and wanting to work on that. And yeah, I fully agree. We need to think about the process. And so I created a currently blank page in the community handbook where we can start to flesh out the process that we do want to use and think it through before we actually get started on any of the work.
All right, cool. Other thoughts? Translation. All right, so first, I guess from a resource perspective, we do have resource dollars to help in this process. All right, so there is, and it's not out of Community Bridge, it's out of the Sloan Foundation. So there are dollars to kind of kickstart this. I actually, now that I'm saying this, I kind of meant to look as to what the cost of translation is. I think it's by the word, so if you take a look at, say, a single metrics page, X number of words, it's X number of dollars. So one of my thoughts was we could use some of those dollars to do kind of rough translation into a variety of different languages, whatever those we have to think about that. And then ask for community support to fine tune the areas that aren't being expressed very well on these translations. So that's kind of my first thought. Do people have comments on that?
I've never done this kind of translation, so I don't know.
No, I haven't either.
Oh, and I didn't realize my video wasn't on either.
It's not. No, it is. I mean, I'm thinking if we have the funds might be best used for just kind of some course work, not course like COURSE, but kind of course level work, just to kind of unlock some of the pages that are currently in English into other languages. I'm guessing that the translation services that are out there aren't perfect. And then asking community support to again, fine tune it. So again, if we have dollars and we're looking at doing this kind of fine tuning, I'm afraid that would be a weird spot for the money.
Mm.
So anybody have thoughts on this? I'm very open to ideas here. I'm trying to kind of incrementally go forward as to how we might do this.
So I thought that.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. A thought that comes to mind for me is that if we have people in the community who are interested in doing the translation, then we could offer it to them first, or we can make an open call for a specific language on the mailing list or something like that. And then if we don't find someone who wants to do it, then we can go to some kind of service, Fiverr or other platforms, or I don't know if there are professional service probably as well that we could hire.
Yeah, there
But
are.
to open it, yeah, to offer it to the community first is one thought.
Okay.
Yeah, perhaps I can add something here. Hello, everyone. I'm Mick. So I'm looking here at Bianca and Marianne, and they both have volunteered to translate to Portuguese and to French. And as George mentioned, if there's volunteers who like to translate, I think we can form groups and try that. I think it would be really nice, and everybody will learn more. And I don't see why we can't try that.
Okay.
So in the badging project,
Uh-huh.
we are working, we were working at getting some kind of trial or free version of Crowdin. But after talking to some people from Crowdin, I believe from Crowdin on GitHub, it doesn't look like that's going to work out. So I was going to bring up in the DNI meeting that we needed some kind of subscription to that for the badging project for the internships.
What
But
is
that, I've been looking more into it. I'm actually going to link the plans here that we.
What is it?
It's a crowdsourcing translation program.
Okay.
But that's just something I had in mind talking, hearing about this, and I don't know too much. Sala would be more of a person to ask about this because he's a lot more familiar with it.
Okay.
But this would be an option as well.
Okay.
One more thing, if we are assigning it to the people, it's going to be an ongoing basis, not a one-time. Yes, one time we are converting it as well as when community keep on adding things, so we have to keep on translating. So are these groups are going to be maintaining it, or like do we have a professional service who will keep on doing it onwards? So these are the avenues we have to think on long-term basis also.
No, that's fair. Yep. So Ray put another option in the chat.
Yeah, I just
Okay,
heard about this recently. I mean, so I don't have any direct experience with this, but apparently this is a tool that's becoming pretty popular with a lot of open source projects. This is an FYI. So.
Okay. Is it a service? Is it a paid service?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of competitor to, Crowdin.
Okay.
So yeah, so you can, I mean, actually at GitLab we use Crowdin, but this, but it's got, I mean, like every tool has got pluses and minuses, and somebody at GitLab just, I think this is another tool that was sort of brought up recently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess one of my thoughts is that if we, I think this is a good idea, as we kind of go down this translation route, I'm guessing there's a lot of heavy lifting early. That there's just a lot of pages and a lot of like corners of the CHAOSS project that would be subject to that. And I think if we, I know that several people have kind of volunteered, but from a resource perspective, that might be a little overwhelming if we're trying to just ask a few people. So part of my thought was to use a service to kind of just get that heavy lift done first, and then use people in the community to kind of do what Vinod was doing, kind of talk about that ongoing or that refinement. I don't mean I just mean people volunteering. So those are my thoughts.
One other way, Matt, we can encourage a team like a working group to really look into this kind of thing.
Okay.
I think like the discussions we were having last time, how to expand ourselves.
Okay.
In some communities, you see they treat documentations the same preferences that they give to code.
Yeah.
So we can also try to encourage a working group that should really look into this kind of thing and really make it a community, part of the community.
So do you think that's the Armstrong sensible place to kind of organize the work within the working groups? Well,
when I say like working group, because since the translations vary from language to language, it's just to give them a statue that, look, this is it's a community thing and it is your thing. So if they can organize themselves, people doing Portuguese, people doing it in France, they can organize themselves the way they think
I
it's
see.
best. Then they try to come up with something.
Okay, so it wouldn't, you're not talking about working groups like the metrics working groups. You're
No,
talking
no, no,
about
no,
a
no.
different
At least,
working group.
yeah,
Okay.
at least they should just organize themselves and become part of the community.
Okay.
Because in this context, I know there is a time we organized something like a course, and students were really encouraged to go on open source project and make a
Okay.
kind of active contributions. A good number of students choose to translate documentation. They got pull requests accepted by that community, which
Okay.
also counted as a course credit.
Gotcha.
So based on that feedback, I think it's a good idea always to make it open source thing, community thing, open to the public, and welcome all sorts of talents.
I could give course credit for people.
Yeah.
All right, no, that's a good idea. One of the other questions, maybe I have a couple here, is, oh, Georg has a question, I'll go there. Oh, hey, that was the question I was gonna ask, so, but you can, you can ask it. So what's the scope of translation, right? So I think the metrics are a clear candidate for translation, the released metrics.
Yeah, for sure.
So then, like circling out, like concentric rings out from that, is it all the work that's in the working groups, like all of the meeting minutes? I mean, that we're talking, that would be a ton, right? And
Yeah.
very, very ongoing. Is it the documentation for the software? Is it the website? What are people's thoughts on this?
So could I jump in quickly?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I'm assuming here because I came in late, and I'm sorry about that. So I'm assuming this is the tangent from Crowdin or not.
This is just translation kind of in general in the CHAOSS project.
We kind of wanted to explore that angle in badging as a prototype, right? As a model to kind of be able to come up with a framework for translation. And so in badging, and Tola is the intern who's basically exploring this. We wanted to consider Crowdin, but the point that we're asking at here is, what is the scope of things being translated?
Yep.
And I think the way we were approaching this is that if you have a markdown file, markdown basically can be written in any language, as far as I know, because parsing it only uses punctuators that should be available and should not interfere with the flow of any language. There's always white space separating any marks. So technically speaking, you could create a localized folder with language abbreviations .md of every document. So we were just thinking on that model, and the idea that when we have a document in a repo, we would use some convention to always have the I18N suffixed versions of those documents available somehow using a convention. That would be the first step of the process. And here we would say the scope would be whatever markdown files you have that you can faithfully translate.
Okay.
I don't think minutes are best translated in the form of a markdown file, because they are most usable when they are being authored, as they are shared minutes that are occurring when we're meeting.
Yep.
And this is a hurdle we'll get to down the road. It's like, how can we have UN style meetings in minutes? And I don't think we're ready to cross that bridge in open source. I'm not sure online collaboration will get there anytime soon, but we can focus on artifacts that are generated and distributed with releases as the first priority. So there's a release. It comes with international or localized um, um, material. Anything you can read with a release of any open source aspect um, could be translatable in that release.
Okay. So that would include metrics release for sure.
Yes, you could gradually get there though. You don't have to say, okay, my goal is 100%. Let's do 100%. That would be kind of you get there when you have a process that is scalable, that is sustainable. So we're still working on that process. And I'm sure other projects have processes. Um, so we're trying to refine one based on, Markdown only.
Can I ask you a question, Sala? So in the D&I badging process, if you were thinking about translation, is it about providing translation to the process itself? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So somebody could apply
Yeah.
in a different language.
So in the weird way, I structured this in my head. It's a funny way. I thought to myself, you would have an I18N repo, part of the org, which has a submodule of all the repos that have translatable material.
Okay.
And then you would basically create branches or whatever for each, whatever convention you use. You would use those submodules in that repo to translate Markdown content that is distributable. And in that sense, you could upstream it back, or you could push it back into the source repos against the submodules, right? So because submodule, when you commit to it, you can then push it back to the original, to the origin, right? So in that model, I think I'm more process centric in the way I thought about it. So in this process, yeah, we would, whatever repos, those repos would definitely include the framework repo, which we don't have yet, which is the documentation on how to go about badging. Yep. It could also include the applying aspects. So how do you apply to an event badge, right? Event DNI badge.
Okay.
So these are complexities, though, that we still have to think through.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other? This is helpful. So right now, kind of what I'm hearing is, right, we don't have to do the entirety of everything, but candidates could be the metrics, kind of these released components, the badging process when it gets to that point, right? I think the process is still being built out for D&I badging.
Absolutely.
Others do include the website. Does anybody have any thought on that?
Yeah, I actually was thinking of the website when we started talking about this, just because it has all the info about like the meetings and the metrics. And I wasn't sure, one of my questions was, is this going to be starting off with one thing or a couple of items to translate and trying the process on those items, and then once the process is like finalized and is working, going broader and translating more things or like more items?
Yeah, I think that's the model. Yeah, absolutely. So we're refining a process by taking small bites and learning as much as we can to make sure the process can scale across the different types of challenges, or at least say, no, this type of translation is kind of like pointless because it goes nowhere. And I think that would apply to minutes, meeting minutes. Yeah, so
Okay.
yeah.
So could I propose that we start this process with metrics? I mean, they seem like a very likely candidate. They have been released. We have.
I think they're the one for sure thing that isn't subject to discussion.
Okay. Why don't we? Okay, great. Then why don't we start there?
So I have one.
Yeah.
So at this point, the thing I'm kind of like I want to make sure we not exclude from this is TOLA is working on that. So if we're gonna change trajectories, I think their proposal is like a blueprint, and we can work out of that blueprint because we're making a decision as a project. So I just want to make sure that during the internship, he would work towards the essence of the proposal. So are we thinking that if we change scope to metrics, that TOLA would be documenting the process, how we refine it, and would consider this just a pivot?
Has TOLA, so just so folks know, TOLA is the outreachy student right now working with the D&I badging process. So has TOLA started to lay out a process by which this would be done, Salah?
I think we were kind of distracted trying to figure out how to begin with Crowdin, and then if we're throwing Crowdin, back in the background for a bit or forever, then I think we could say that TOLA has been looking at what we couldn't do, and now we're going to be looking at what we could do.
So why don't maybe following Armstrong's suggestion of creating a group of folks with an interest in doing this and making sure TOLA is part of that conversation as well.
That would be great. That would be okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for all the comments, everybody. This is super helpful. And what I think is a great initiative. Okay, let's see. That should be a comment in here. I don't remember which working group we were in, maybe Common last week, but the discussion came up about metrics releases. So typically we do kind of a twice a year metrics release, kind of the official release that will now capture all of the continuous metrics that are released over a 6-month period. And then any new metrics that come out on those 6-month spots. So we normally do kind of the every twice a year release in association with CHAOSS.Con, but obviously with CHAOSS.Con not happening this summer, we're proposing to do a release sometime this summer. And the question came up, again, I think it was in Common, as to whether or not we stick with a kind of this regular big release, or we just kind of roll it into what would be FOSDEM next year. And the general consensus was, let's stick with a twice a year release, just because it helps capture the continuous metrics that have been released over that period of time, as well as putting serving as a forcing function for working groups to make a push towards that big release. So I don't know if we decided on a date. I put one in there. I just said, how about August 1st is our plan to do the next version? Does anybody have any? I was going to open it up to a date, and I figured, well, I'll just pick one. So I can't imagine that anybody is too committed to a date, but maybe you are. So do you have thoughts on this? Anybody? We just aim at we aim at August 1st, 2020 for the next big release.
I mean, August 1st seems like a good enough day.
That's exactly it, right? I can't imagine anybody.
I mean, it's before Europe goes on vacation, so it it seems like a
That's
good
even more
choice.
information that I put into considering the date.
Yeah.
So is this going to be based on 2 releases a year?
Yeah.
So August would be one release, and what would be the other release?
January 31st. I swapped them. So
We usually had it the day before CHAOSS.Con, and CHAOSS.Con was twice a year. So I like keeping the one in Europe. So January, whatever is before FOSDEM, whether that's the end of January or the 1st or 2nd of February.
March, April, May, June, July, August. Oh, I mean, it's not quite, the cadence is not perfect, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Is everybody all right with that? All right, cool. Let's just go with that. All right, great. Website. So there's been a lot of work done on the website, so thanks for everybody that's been doing that. There are a few, and we can open issues here, but could I ask folks just to go to the website really fast? I'll put the link in here, but you should know it. And can you just take like a minute? Okay, thanks, Ray. Can you take a minute and see if there's anything that kind of is off-putting to you, or like doesn't seem to make sense, or something seems to be missing? So I'm just going to be silent for a couple minutes here while I ask folks to take a look at the website, and then if you have issues, just drop them in this document, and we can try to capture them there, make an issue, and kind of get those changes done. So again, 2 minutes.
Did you post this link to the website, please, so that everybody is on the same page?
There you go.
Thanks.
Yep.
This is a minor thing, but I think for current release, I don't think we need to list the version number under metrics.
Put it in the minutes, would you?
Okay.
So I will say, Sean, responding to that, the reason that's there is because during the regular releases that actually, or not the regular release, the regular release, another tab will actually show up with the pending releases. At least that's the way it was working prior.
Like the in between formal release metrics.
So in the previous release cycle, what we would do is the previous metrics would have their own page, which is what is showing now, and then the new metrics that were up for the metrics candidates would have a new page. So basically, we'd have the at the time of the regular release, we would actually have the previous release metrics would have its own page, and then the new release metrics would have its own page. So, and this is the previous way we're doing it. So if we're changing the, because we've gone to a continuous release, we can certainly, it probably would make sense to remove that, that versioning.
I just think it's too much text to process, and the release history. Well, anyway, I'll write it in the document. I can get to my mouse to go there. Oops.
All right. Give me another minute or so here to finish any thoughts you might have. This is super helpful. Thank you. Fine, Georg. As long as you keep it up, you know what I'm talking about, probably. So basically, I'm
Yeah,
always
I
have this
know what you're talking about.
that Georg keeps an updated list of articles in the media page, and you know how dates are sometimes. Like the most current articles from 2017. It's not. I know you do a good job, but okay. As long as you promise to keep doing it.
When I stop doing it, we can remove it.
Okay. Okay. Good. Thank you. So kind of maybe what we can do with this is start creating a few issues for the website. You know what I mean? Just to start talking through. So I just wanted to capture these. I don't think people were opening issues, and I thought maybe we could just kind of kickstart it here and open issues that way. So just kind of get that.
I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, get that process going in some form or fashion. All right, cool. Thank you.
In regards to the Indeed comment, is that listing still open?
It's on pause right now.
Oh, it's on pause.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was about to say we still have the hiring button and the community. We did have someone that I don't know that opened an issue on the repo saying I can't apply. So might just want to remove those for now.
Okay. Okay. Other items right now? Thank you everybody for website stuff. Georg, you wrote an article.
Yeah, at the last conference I went to, Scale, I met up at the Unix booth, and they have a magazine, member magazine, the login. And talking with them, they were interested in open source community health. And so I wrote a 2,400 word article for them. And I'm happy to share that with anyone who would like an early peek at it. I would also love feedback and revision. I have to turn this in. It's already been accepted with minor revisions, but I can still make some changes if anyone has some thoughts, and it's due by the end of this week. So
I mean, if you share it with me,
I'm open. I'm interested, Georg.
Excellent. I will
For the meantime, Mark, just a minor concern. You see, like on the website where we have the tweet. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if we could make it a little bit dynamic, like using a marquee to display things, or but to limit the number of schools and clicking that users visiting might do.
The tweet thing?
Yeah, like you have to figure out to scroll to see things. Sometimes it's good to use this dynamic display, like using a marquee. It scrolls automatic.
Okay.
Just
I
to
don't know what
display,
options
just
there
this
are.
kind of fancy dynamic things. It's not really adding any much, but it reduces the time somebody can spend to capture important information on the website.
Okay. I don't know, Kevin, are there options for displaying different?
Yes. Yeah, there are
Okay.
some different options we could do. Armstrong, can you create an issue with your specific recommendations for how you'd like that changed?
Okay, I will do so.
Can I add one more aspect? Because so there's a CSS query for reduced motion, I believe now, that helps with accessibility. It defines the context of someone who is using a operating system where they use an accessibility flag that says, I don't want as much motion. And that applies here in the sense that conventionally people just made rotators or whatever they call them. But with reduced motion, you could infer that the person at least would not want the content to move quickly. We could even either make it slower or make it manually with one click, back and forth, just to make sure that everyone is able to get their 5-second window, not which is not 5 seconds for everyone, right? So I just wanted to point that out because it's just relevant now that we're making those accessibility improvements as we go.
Do you have, Sala, do you have maybe a reference as to how this might be deployed?
Yeah, so I guess when the issue is open, I can jump in there and try to elaborate a bit on this.
Okay, okay, that sounds good. Thanks.
I would very much appreciate any other comments that people have about accessibility as well, even if that includes opening just an issue that is specific to accessibility on the website.
Okay. I'll open a kind of a generic issue on accessibility, Kevin, and then I'll ping Sala and maybe we can go from there.
Yeah, I think what we want to do is new things, we should think of accessibility, old things we should gradually improve. Because I mean, it's a continuous improvement philosophy, right? So you just want to make sure you're more and more accessible the more forward you go, I guess. Yeah.
Yep. Point well taken. Okay. Brief update on the community reports. We talked a lot about it last week, but I think since we last had the community call, we did meet with Manrique and Georg and Sean. So kind of the Grimoire Lab and the Augur teams, thinking through what the process would look like in terms of creating the community reports as a collaborative endeavor. I think we are meeting later this week with folks from the Linux Foundation to continue to talk through processes by which we can capture this information, kind of the workflow. They're really helping us kind of think through what that is. The other issue that came up was the ability to connect as people make requests for reports with Salesforce at the Linux Foundation to kind of help us get a better understanding of where these requests are coming from, who's making the requests. It's data that we cannot see because we're not members of the LF, but just in terms of perhaps encouraging people to participate in CHAOSS.Cons, things like that, that may be useful down the road. So I don't know precisely how that would work quite yet, but we're working on that. Georg, podcast, anything that you want to add there?
Podcast is growing continually. I know there has not been any visible updates in the last 4 weeks because we were still working on the back. We are going to a weekly release schedule. This is the big update. Weekly release schedule starting Friday. We will have one episode every Friday coming out. At least so is our plan. And we are we have some interesting interviews scheduled. The next one this week is with Ruth Cheesley from the Mautic community. You might have seen the community report. I think I shared that on the mailing list a while ago.
I think you did.
And then the next one that I'm organizing is with Chris Anichek from CNCF to talk about the open source community health at the Cloud Native Compute Foundation and their DevStats tool that they have, and then also their annual report where they do include a lot of metrics.
Nice.
And then there are other organizers as well, and I know Matt Broberg and Venia Logan, they are organizing on Thursday a late night just get together and chat about metrics. That will be an episode if it turns out well. And yeah, we have some other things in the making. And I want to thank all of the organizers for putting together interesting topics and reaching out to interesting people to interview, and all of our panelists for being available to be on the panels and help with the recordings and have some interesting conversations that we will be sharing.
Again, well done. That got off the ground quickly and got organized very nicely. So that's awesome. Sally, you have your hand up. I don't know if that's hand up from now or hand up from a while ago.
Yeah, it was hurting. Thank you for reminding me.
Okay.
One more thing on the podcast. It is not yet in any of our podcasting apps because we want to release 3 episodes before we go to iTunes and other places, because that will make it a faster submission process.
Okay.
If we demonstrate having.
When would that be? Do you have a timetable for that?
Next week.
Okay.
So next week, Friday, is when we release episode 3, where we talk about Augur. And then after that release, so Friday or that weekend, we're going to start submitting the podcast.
Right on. Okay, cool. Thank you. Few minutes here. Sean, Augur updates, anything that you want to let people know about?
Right now, we've got the Google Summer of Code students that we're ramping up. And that's kind of where our attention is right now.
Okay. Georg, anything? I think you're the Grimoire Lab rep here. Anything on Grimoire Lab side of things?
Nothing that comes to mind.
Okay. All right. Cool. And then lastly, metrics. So I had one update. The value working group from last week is looking at kind of similar to what Common did. Maybe it's that time slot of reorganizing the focus area names. And so right now the proposal, which seemed to gain traction on Thursday, is organizational, individual, and social. So it'd be organizational value, individual value, and social value. I think I got that right, didn't I, Sean? Those were ones that you brought forward.
Yep.
So we're looking at taking the existing set of metrics that have been released and then organizing under these focus areas. And then as we think about new metrics, again, organizing under these focus areas. So I think that was the one thing I wanted to bring forward with value. Anything else on a metrics working group side of things? Last couple minutes here. Georg, you did send out the DNI.
Yep, tomorrow is DNI. We have 2 big topics for tomorrow. One is a leadership principles metric that Emma Irvin proposed. I would like to review that tomorrow with everyone. And then also the documentation accessibility metric that we've been working on. I would like to make some progress tomorrow with that. And you're all invited to join.
There was also the metric that I think Miriam had put together that I was kind of working on as well.
Okay, so we have 3 metrics.
Yeah, it was the issue accessibility, if I recall. Was that?
Yeah, like the issue list, right? The issue list.
Yes, exactly, right. Yeah. About tagging metrics in ways that make them approachable for people in different ways. So I'd been making changes to that, Miriam. So if you.
Oh, I'll take a look. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Cool. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It's good to see everybody. It's almost June, so I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but it means something to me because maybe it'll be sunny here.
I don't know how many UNO people know, but we just got an email saying we're planning on in person in the fall. So
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, everybody's officially doing that. We'll see.
Planning on being hopeful for fall. Yeah, that's a good plan.
It's not a bad plan.
Hope is always a good plan, right? So it's a good thing they didn't send an email that said, let's not hope, you know, because. All right.
Everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.